Hi, my name is Dan Bruder, and I wanted to introduce you to this webinar I did with BOK Financial. The webinar actually picks up about 10 minutes into it, so I wanted to give you a heads up that I'll share a couple of the slides that we did in advance of that leads to the webinar in a second. The first thing we talked about was this idea of integrity, or living a life of integrity, or an integrated life, where we have several factors in our life that are working together to create really an outcome, a meaningful outcome, and that's living a life of integrity. So we talked about that, and then we moved into this concept of focus, and we started out with focus facts, and the first focus fact is focus fact number 1, which is the mind can only focus on one thought at a time. And then we pick up into the webinar here, and that is where we start with focus fact number 2, and that's the live webinar that's picking up right now.
We tend to move towards that, right? The idea of focusing on something. I know that because I ride bikes a lot, particularly non-bikes, and when I focus on that rock that's standing in front of me and my tire, I tend to hit it every time, and I tend to go over my handlebars, right? So this idea of focus, when we focus on something, we tend to pursue that. So these two focus facts are important when we start looking at the overall context of our life, because we need to know where our focus is at any given time so that we know if it's consistent with where we want to go. However, if we don't know where we want to go, whatever we're focusing on is going to be fine for that moment, right? So that's why it's important to really wrap this around with clear direction. So here's a quick little video to talk that shares a scenario. It's only 10 seconds about focus and the double-edged sword.
No! Harry, no! Don't look at the light!
I can't help it. It's so beautiful.
So that's the two sides of focus. We talk about focus generally in the context of, yeah, I need to have clear, good focus on things, but at the same time, we're always focusing on something, right? The question is our focus helping us move forward, or is it holding us back? I created what I call the focus spectrum, recognizing that our focus is really on a spectrum. Sometimes it's all the way over on the green side, and we're focused on clear outcomes, we're learning from new results, we're talking about, hey, what will make this work? We're focused on the people around us, we're people-centric and opportunities, and we're moving forward. And when we focus on these things, we tend to start pursuing more important and meaningful tasks that lead to something that motivate us. On the other hand, we have this tendency to focus on obstacles. We tend to blame people. We become experts on why things won't work. Now, this idea, a lot of people think red and green means good and bad, and they check out right here. I got this, it's positive, negative. And I want to share with you, it's not that at all. This is a focus progression. What happens is that most human beings, when we see something that is different or a challenge, we tend to find out what's wrong with it. Obstacles. We then focus on various different things. Well, why can't I do this, right? That's absolutely natural. The question here is, do we stop there? So when we are on the red side, focusing on obstacles, why things won't work, focusing on myself, we tend to not move things forward, right? And that's the whole idea here is red side is a progression that we go to, and we need to go there. This isn't about never, ever thinking about obstacles. It's about acknowledging obstacles for the purpose to overcome obstacles, right? But when we focus on the outcomes, the obstacles become less dominant in our thinking. When all we focus on is obstacles, we don't see the outcomes. So here's a depiction of that. When our obstacles overshadow our outcomes, meaning we're in a meeting and all we do is talk about what's wrong, we become experts on what won't work because we're focused on all the challenges. Again, we need to know that, but only to overcome them. Because most of the time when we set a goal, we don't want to lose focus of that goal, and we don't want to dominate the focus on all the obstacles. So that's one example of this. By the way, the focus spectrum is like about an hour exercise that we go through each one of these really in depth. I just share a couple of them with you here. So this one is obstacles versus outcomes. Think to yourself, are you ever in a meeting where our obstacles overshadow our outcomes? And our focus is clearly on that. Maybe in an organization, do you have people that are dominant on the red side where they're always focusing on obstacles? On the other hand, do you have people that always focus on the outcomes and never see the obstacles? And that's the art of leadership. When do we turn these things on and off? But sometimes we have to look at, where is my focus on the spectrum? Is it driving me forward or holding me back? Sometimes it's good that it's holding us back. We need to stop and analyze. Other times we need to move forward. That's really the essence. I'll go through another example here on the focus spectrum and we'll move on. But the one around anxiety and opportunity. So on the red side, we experience a level of anxiety. And I don't know if anyone suffers from this. I believe that there's a percentage of the population that does suffer with high anxiety, and that's really worry or fear. And we experience this emotion called anxiety or worry or fear, and a common reaction to that is taking control of a situation. When we take control of a situation, that's a self-centered activity. So in the context of a team, when you're leading, when you potentially feel anxiety and take control, what we're doing is we're not trusting others, we're putting our faith in ourselves, and we're essentially robbing others from the opportunity to pursue something meaningful for them when we take control. So if anybody suffers from lack of a delegation, because at some point in my life I received notoriety or praise for taking control of something when I experienced anxiety and I completed something, so those are the emotions behind this. But we can't live our life focusing when we're experiencing anxiety or worry or fear and then taking control, because that robs other people of their opportunity to pursue something meaningful or learn. And as a leader, we need to be thinking about that. When I'm feeling anxiety, what am I doing to other people? Am I thinking about myself or am I thinking about them, right? So that's just another layer of this focus spectrum that we go into. And it's just really to illustrate that our focus is really dominant in our behaviors and actions and ultimately our habits. And it's not just me individually, it's collectively as a team. So with that, if focus is so important, how do we create anchors so that we can focus, we can anchor our focus on meaningful outcomes? Now, what I mean by that is, if the green side is important and having clear outcomes are important, many of us don't have clear outcomes in our life. We don't know. We have relationships, but what are the outcomes of those relationships? What are we pursuing? We may feel as though we want to be physically and psychologically healthy, but we've never talked about what do those outcomes look like, right? And what I'm saying is that we need to be building these outcomes in our personal lives so that we can be anchoring our focus when someone else tries to sway our focus. For example, I don't know if you guys are into smartwatches. I used to enjoy going out having a beer. Many of you probably do that. Go have a beer with some friends. And then I started tracking my sleep. I don't know if you guys do that. And I started realizing that every time I had a beer or 2 beers, my sleep quality went down. Now, my focus was, I want to have relationships with these people, but I also knew the importance of sleep, right? So I felt like I had a decision to make. Do I continue to meet with these people and have a beer and then not sleep well, right? But I have clear outcomes. I want to have really clear, sleeping is a really important thing that leads to greater wellness and fitness, recovery, and mental recovery too. So what I decided to do is, like, I don't need to drink, but I also want to have that social side to have those relationships. So what I started doing is changing my actions that would align better with my focus on my outcomes. 1, I want to be healthy. 2, I want good relationships. So now I go out and I have soda water. Mike, you can probably attest to that. We've been out several times, and he might look at me and say, why is this dude drinking water? But I realize that I can go out and have a good, strong relationship. That's a key outcome for me with my colleagues, but I also want to sleep well, and recovery, that's another outcome. We blend those two together. I can accomplish that, by focusing on those outcomes and then adapting my actions. And now I hardly ever drink anymore because of those outcomes. And that has worked out better. But if I didn't have a relationship focus outcome as well as a health or wellness outcome, I probably wouldn't make those changes. So that's what I mean by focus anchors. We need to know what our outcomes are so that we can focus on them and not get swayed and then adapt our actions. So I'm going to pause for a second here, change gears and go into a model that goes through all this stuff, because it's one thing to talk about this stuff, it's another thing to put it into a context of a framework or model. Does anybody have any questions or comments as we're here based on what we've talked about thus far? What's going on in your head? And I will go ahead and address those before we move on to a new section. What are you thinking? Everybody's on mute. Alicia's not on mute. All right, no questions. So why is this important? Because we started out here talking about integrity. We started out about talking about our life plans, and we recognize that very few people have a life plan. And we know all the studies that say when we write our goals down, we focus on those, we adapt our actions, we have better success. But statistics say very few of us actually do that. We do it for our business, but we don't do it for our own lives. But what if we did it for our business and our lives? And they were using the same framework so that there was a natural integration of work and life. That would be cool, conceptually speaking, right? Why don't we do that? So this is where we're going now. We talked about the need to have a life plan, because if we have a life plan, then we can adapt our focus or put our focus on the things that are meaningful to us in our lives so that we can adapt our behaviors, right? So now we're going from the concept of the importance of focus, how focus can either hold us back or drive us forward. Then we anchor our focus, and now we can adapt our behaviors. Now we're going to move into essentially a framework that does that. So I'm going to start out here with a conversation around this idea of potential. So why do we even care, right? Why do we care that we have something to shoot for in our lives? We do care in business that we have something to shoot for, but that doesn't necessarily translate into life fulfillment. You know, I was this weekend I got that, you know, that dreaded call. I was in a talk. I was doing a talk in Ohio on Wednesday, and after my talk, my wife called me and said everything's okay, which essentially means everything's not okay. I don't know if you ever got that call. So after my my talk, it was actually on this topic. My wife said everything's okay, but Brooke, who lives in Maryland, which is my 25-year-old daughter, is in the hospital, and she said she's in the hospital and she's probably going to get out. And so we'll wait. So I waited the night. The next day I found out she went back to the emergency room. So I got in the car and I drove to Maryland. So I spent 2 days in the hospital with my daughter. And she's fine now. She's fine. She had some issues. But anyway, but I sat there. I stayed there. And I started thinking, like, you know, when we're in the hospital, you know, if I was in the hospital, and I'm a little bit older, I know that might surprise you, but if I was sitting on my dying bed, I wouldn't say, you know, Denise, which is my wife, can you go bring me my bank statement? I want to look at my bank statement because I want to see how much money I made in my business, because that will just make my life so fulfilling. Or can you wheel me outside and put me in front of my new car that I just bought? I just want to look at it. I don't say those things. What I would say is like, hey, could you bring me my kids? I want to see my kids. You know, my friend from high school that we did, can you just bring them? So what I'm saying is that our potential, what we're pursuing in life, and what we get meaning from when we really think about it, isn't those tangible things that we pursue at work. Those are important because they should be feeding what we're pursuing as a human being. I'm not disparaging work. I'm a big believer in work. But what I am saying is that we need to be looking at how work feeds our potential as a human being. And our potential as a human being really comes down to a lot of factors. One of them is relationships. So I'm going to use this idea of potential. And if we know what our potential is as a human being, which changes over time, but if we know what it is, then we have the most dominant focus anchor in our life. So, have you actually identified what your potential is in life? Do you know why you exist? We're going to go through that exercise. But that's the overarching focus anchor in our life. So if we know what our potential is, the question is how do we go do this? How do we obtain that? How do we pursue it? So at the bottom here, I added a few things. We call these focus lenses. These are the focus lenses of life: relationships, wellness, work, and interests. Now, you might have different things. Some people put in finance and different things. But this is what we use, and this is what our personal whiteboard is built on. These are the areas of life that we want to focus on, and when we integrate these things, creating integrity within our life, when we integrate these things, we then have a clear shot at pursuing or realizing our potential. And that's what we're talking about here. So we look at our relationships, wellness, work, and interests. And then we got, like I said, there's that, see that road? That's kind of a road there. It's a bit unobstructed. Like, if it was that easy. If we could, one, identify our potential, focus on it, identify the clear relationships that we want to pursue, our wellness, physical, psychological, how work fits into this, and what personal interests we have, put all these things together, and then in a perfect world, we just reach our potential. It's just magic, right? It's really not that magic, because we have these things that come into play. One of those being external influences. You know, I mentioned this earlier too, is really the pathway to our potential is obstructed by other people's influence on our life. And some of those other people aren't necessarily concerned whether or not you are pursuing your potential as a human being. They are concerned that your interests and activities align with theirs. They're also concerned with whether or not you buy their product. So these external influences that are current, some of them are current. What are we watching? What are we listening to? What are we reading? Who are we hanging out with? How is that influencing our life? So these external influences have a role. We also go back to when we were kids, 6, 7, 8. Those influences, the environment we grew up in, our brothers, our sisters, our parents, our coaches, our teachers, all influence. They all put a little stamp on your life. The question is are they holding us back or driving us forward? Because when times get tough, do we start focusing on all these things that are keeping us from moving forward? Are we thinking about what our parents did to us when we were 12? Or the coach that said, you're not good enough? And are we using these things, focusing on those obstacles? But we do that if we don't know where we're going, our potential. So the idea is here, if we know our potential, these external influences, they don't go away. We just know we don't have to pay attention to them. So at the top of this, again, is potential. We want to integrate our focus lenses, and then we look at external influences. So the next thing that gets in the way is us, right? So at the end of the day, there's one common thing that we can say about everybody. There's only been one person that has been part of all of your bad decisions, and that is who? It's you. So if we're going to blame somebody, we probably should blame ourselves, because the only thing is we are the best at lying to ourselves. We lie to ourselves more than we lie to anybody. So, and we have been present for 100% of our mistakes. So internally, we have what we call attributes and shadows. We are who we are, and then we have these shadows that we learn to either overcome, or sometimes we don't overcome. Those shadows, I want to talk about that. Shadows are those things that stand in our way to getting us or leading us to our potential. For example, I played football for something like 13, 14 years, and I learned a lot of things on the football field. Like if I was having a bad day or a bad practice, I could go ahead and just knock somebody right across the jaw, and that would turn into a good practice, and I would get praised for that. That doesn't work really well in the corporate world. It just doesn't, right? Like, I'm having a bad day, I'm going to go hit Mike across the jaw. Not a good thing. So what I'm saying is that what happens as a kid, we tend to hang on to those influences. They turn into some various different internal attributes, and they become shadows in our lives. They stand in the way from us realizing our potential if we know what our potential is. They hurt our relationships. They hurt our ability to get better from a psychological perspective. Sometimes they hurt our way that we lead at work, and they keep us from pursuing certain interests. These shadows, again, think of a shadow. When the light is shined on us, There is a shadow, it's a darkness that comes out in the light. And when I say the light, it's when things are tough. So if we're curious about what a shadow is really, what are the things that I do when somebody makes me angry? How do I react? Some people get angry back and fight back. That's a shadow. Some people ask perpetual questions. They just ask question, 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 but it's a similar reaction because they don't want to deal with the issue. They just keep asking questions over and over again, and then their justification for that is, well, I just need to know. Some people just clam up. Some people walk away. These are all shadow behaviors that keep us from realizing our potential. And these are internal attributes. So again, on the pathway to potential, we have these obstacles that stand in the way. So I just want to acknowledge this because this is the framework of the personal whiteboard. And those of you that went through the interview, the AI-based interview, you went through a series of questions. They weren't canned questions. You went through those questions where the AI was dynamically personalizing an interview to ask you questions about your potential, about your relationships, your wellness, your work, your interests, your internal attributes, shadows, and your external influences and inspiration. You went through that. It was a personalized interview. The AI was able to adapt it. But all it was doing was asking you questions so that it could build a framework for you, which is essentially a personal whiteboard or a life plan. And that's where we're going. It's really building a life plan and putting as much emphasis on this as we do our business strategic plan. So you guys went through those questions, those that did the pre-work. I don't know how long you took to do that, but it's a fairly extensive interview, and it's not a questionnaire, by the way. When we train the AI, it's not training an AI to say, ask this question, then that question. It's saying, find out what Mark or Chris thinks about their potential as a human being. Drill deeper. So we won't do this, but if we were to compare all of your interviews, they would all be uniquely different. They would be attached just to you. And then the AI creates what we call a personal whiteboard. And this is what it looks like. I sent out an email to several of you and said, hey, here's how you convert your interview. And the AI then takes your comprehensive interview and builds a life plan, which you can now modify. Now, all of these things become focus anchors. So here's what it looked like for those that didn't do that. Some of you did that, some of you didn't do it. This is the software working in the background, and this is the AI actually asking questions. It takes your answer, and it then identifies what's the next question that I need to ask to find out more in-depth information from this person about their potential, which is different than somebody else. What are some things we need to know about their relationships? Who's important? Well, tell me why your relationship with your spouse is important. So none of these questions are canned. So this is a change in technology, by the way, because most of us think interviews on a computer are questionnaires, assessments, and such. This is a dynamic interview by a fully trained personal coach that has the ability to adapt. This was designed for employees in the organization because most of the time we say employees are important, but we don't necessarily give them the tools to succeed in life. We give them tools to actually succeed in their job today, but we don't give them tools to succeed in life so that they can create greater meaning through their work. So after that interview, what happened is the AI went ahead and created your personal whiteboard. And that's what's going on in the background here. It takes a couple minutes. The AI took all the words you said. You didn't know exactly where this was going. You were just having a conversation. It then put it all into a personal whiteboard. So now you have a detailed life plan that includes your potential, your internal and external influences, as well as clear outcomes around your relationships, wellness, work, and your interests. So now you have a draft plan for your life, which again, 95% of the human beings or the adults in the U.S. don't have this. And those that went through this, you now have something that 95% of the people in this country don't have. And that's a cool thing. Doesn't mean it's final, but it does mean you're on the pathway to creating clear focus so that you can anchor your focus in something meaningful for you and live an integrated life. So, with that, I'm going to pause again because we're going to change gears, and I'm going to hope we get one more question than we did last time. And again, so I want to see, what are you guys thinking? What are your thoughts based on where we are? The next step where we're going to go with this is we're going to start digging into each one of these areas to go deeper. And those of you that have completed this already have a draft. The others can actually follow along using that worksheet that we shared earlier. So what are you guys thinking? What's on your mind?
So I don't know if it's a question, just a comment. So I think I must have clicked on the wrong thing when I went to do this, because all of the questions I was asked were about our company and our company's goals. And so I didn't end up with a personal whiteboard. I ended up with a strategy whiteboard for my company. So I think I clicked on the wrong thing. So can I go back and do the other one?
Yes, absolutely. So the concept of blendification is that work and life should be blended. We have two tracks. We have a company focus track, which interviews everybody, where AI Fusion is our AI's name, interviews everybody in the organization about what they think the organization should do. Basically, what's the organization's potential, what's the organization's customer focus, and so forth. Using the exact same framework, Kim, but it's applied to the business. And then the other side of that, which some of you checked on, was the personal whiteboard, or the personal 360, and that's a life plan. The idea is they follow the same pathway, because we want to have an integrated format between our life and work. And if we can understand our life plan and then see how this connects to the company's future, we have a better life. To me, I think that's valuable for everyone in the organization, not just the executives. And now it can be delivered to everybody in the organization. So this is really about creating a participatory model. You did the strategy whiteboard. The intent of this was the personal whiteboard. There's nothing keeping you, Kim, from going back and doing the strategy whiteboard. Now you have the benefit of you could actually have Fusion build your strategy whiteboard for your company based on your interview if you completed that, which is kind of cool.
Okay, thank you.
So anything else? Nothing else?
No, I just this is Nick here. I really enjoy the idea of the integrity piece, right? Because there's so much in their culture that is wanting to say my problems are somebody else's fault. And I think what this says too is that all of us, to be not in integrity is to be divided, and a house divided can't stand very well or long. And so it just, I really like that, because I'm thinking, man, how can I live in more integrity throughout my life? And that's my job. And if I'm not living in integrity, just like you said, Dan, I've been around for 100% of the mistakes I've made. And so I like the idea of that personal response, like, hey, look, that's my job, and my kids and my wife and those around are going to either benefit or pay the price. They'll feel that, right, one way or the other. So I appreciate you bringing up that concept.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we focused on integrity there, but the opposite of integrity, and a quick little background using words too. The origin, I'll go over the word in a second, but there was this thing called Hippocrates, and Hippocrates is really the Greek word for the actors from a long time ago. And they didn't have enough actors, so what the actors did, they had one actor, and that actor played multiple parts, and then each time they would go backstage, put a mask on, come out and play a different part. So Hippocrates was what they were called. They were basically actors that played a bunch of different parts and put on masks. We know that word as what? Hypocrites, right? So today, the opposite of integrity is hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And it's you know, most things in life are a spectrum, because I know I have Hippocratic tendencies. I just want to get better, because the more I find that I'm being a hypocrite, I find that I'm not living a life of integrity. But if I don't know what I want to do in my life, I'm susceptible to a lot of different things that make me a kind of a default hypocrite, right? And so I'm really focused on, man, is what I'm doing right now consistent with what I want to do in my life? Is it consistent with the relationship I want to have with my spouse, my kids, my community, my work associates. And gosh, I got to tell you, there's times, Mike can tell you, I'm in meetings and I know I'm not operating with the same level of integrity, consistency in a meeting. That stresses me out, because when that light shine on me, a shadow comes out. And you know, I have shadows and I'm like, oh no, I'm operating in a shadow right now, right, Mike? You've seen this. But that makes me feel like a hypocrite, because my intention, my focus is on being somebody that's completely integrated. So that's the concept here. The next layer of that is how we do this. I mean, I've done a TED Talk, and my TED Talk was like it's got a fair amount of views, but it was about this concept. And there's so many talkers out there that come with concepts, and consultants that will come to your company and say, here's a concept, and you're like, that was awesome. And then 2 days later, you have no idea what to do with it. We're now moving into, we went through the concept, the importance, that now we're going into the framework and the action. That's why we did this as an hour and a half, because I didn't want to just, we could end this right now and you go, well, that's a really cool concept. But I want to show you a specific framework and technology that can bring this to your life, and not only yours, everyone in your organization, if you choose to. So that's, and this, by the way, this is new technology. We couldn't do this 6 months ago. It just wasn't possible. Not at the extent to which we did it here. So that's why I think this is really cool. And so we're going to go through this. I don't exactly know how we'll pull all this off, because we've got two different groups of people here. We've got people that have actually done the pre-work and are a little more familiar with this. And we've got people that just jumped on here and hadn't had an opportunity to do the pre-work. So I'm going to try to merge you guys into this conversation. The connection here is that worksheet. So if you have that worksheet, what we're going to do is we're going to go through each one of these blocks here. And we're just going to dig a little deeper. We're not going to walk out of here with a full life plan, but we're going to get you on the pathway to building a life plan, because again, 95% of the people don't have it, and it's a big gap in society. So that's what we're going to do. Now, I'm going to go through each one of these blocks. We're going to dig in deeper, take some notes. Sometimes we'll open it up for questions and blurt out. What I'm not going to do is just go away for 10 minutes and say, think about this. So I'm going to keep the energy going here as we go through this. It's not meant to finalize your plan. It's to get you on the pathway to build this, because I believe it's important. So we're going to start out with the first block on the personal whiteboard, which is potential. So when you look at your potential, this is what we're going to do. So I'm going to just go over what this is. Potential is made up of three things: your purpose, your principles, and your pursuits. Now, if we know what our purpose is in life and we focus on it, we anchor our focus in it, man, can we be powerful. Not only can we be powerful, we can be fulfilled, because a life without direction is not a life of fulfillment. A life with clear direction that has integrity with our actions, behaviors, and habits is a life that produces fulfillment, not only from us, but for others. So having a clear purpose. So this right here, and I'm going to do this right here. So this is an example. So on one side, we've got the definition. On the right side, we have an example. This, by the way, is an example of a president of an engineering company. That's right. The persona is somebody that's around 40 years old that has multiple kids and is a president. And it's a female, by the way. Not that that matters, but it is a female. And so you'll see references to mother and things like that. So on one side, we have the definition. On the other side, we have an example. On your worksheet, you have a blank area where you can take some notes on this too. So again, I'll just talk through this. Feel free to take some notes and actually start writing down what your purpose is in your life. Just take a note there so that you can go out and build it back. If you've gone through the software, you already have your notes, right? That's another source for you. So I'm going to keep going here. So that's the purpose. Now our principles, these are those guardrails, right? Because if we said, hey, I want to do X in our life, I want to do something very meaningful, without having clear principles or guardrails, we would then spend all of our energy on that, and we could start impacting negatively other people. Well, it's like somebody that says, I want to have the biggest company in the world and that's my purpose in life. And they burn so fast in that they destroy relationships. They don't have great relationships with their kids. They become what we call successful failures. So when we're pursuing something of meaning, we need to know that we can't cross certain boundaries or guardrails. We call them principles. So these are the boundaries that guide your decisions, actions, and relationships. Without them, we could get lost too. So not only do we need direction, we need boundaries to keep us on path. So think about any principles you have, any principles. It might be integrity for most companies. One of their principles would be integrity. In the company context, principles are analogous to your core values, right? So purpose, where we're going, what are our boundaries, and then what are some sub areas brought down here, and that's pursuits. What are some meaningful passions that drive your personal growth, fulfillment, and contribution to others? So if we look over here at the example, here we have clear principles, integrity, faith, empathy, but then we have some pursuits: security, wisdom, joy, purpose, fulfillment. Mine are similar to that. I don't know why, but mine are similar to that in pursuits. Now, pursuits are interesting because a lot of people are like, I want to pursue a bigger house. I want to pursue a better car. I want a faster car. I want to have X millions of dollars in the bank. And then we go, okay, so once you get that, what happens? Well, I'm super happy. Well, are you happy for like what? How long? What about the relationships? What's the meaning we get for that? So pursuits here, security that this person had, that might come in the way of financial security, right? But what we're really looking for is not a big bank account. We're looking for the security that comes with that, right? Wisdom is probably a good thing to pursue in life. To me, it's one of my pursuits is patience, because I have a shadow that is not patient or impatience, right? So I am pursuing patience, peace. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for physical things. Going back to that example about what are you looking for at your hospital bed. We've heard those analogies. It's typically not wheel me outside and let me see my car. Or, hey, let's look at this picture. In fact, this morning I send a picture every day to my daughters. I don't know if you get that. And a picture of our house that we used to own, which was a pretty cool house. And I was like, I'm going to send this to them. I was like, no, that's not important. I always send them pictures of us together as a family. So I want them to remember the relationship side. But when I saw that picture of the house, I was like, that's meaningless. It's a physical pursuit, but what we're really looking for is something that's more meaningful inside of us. So that's where I want you to take a minute here, not necessarily now, and build out your pursuits, your principles, and purpose. So I'm going to pause and feel like take some notes here as you go through this. But what questions are coming up on this topic in terms of potential? No questions? How many of you, by show of hands, have really dug into your lives to identify your clear purpose, principles, and pursuits? How many of you done that? Looks like Chris has, Nick has, Ben has as well. So this is cool because now we have the utmost focus anchor in our life. Now we can start adapting our actions and behaviors. Now we can say this external influence is not going to change my focus, right? So we're going to move on to a couple other things there. So hopefully you're taking some notes and so it's triggering some thoughts in here. But we're going to go deeper. So I saw a talk the other day, and somebody said there was a consultant. They said everybody has to have a life pursuit or purpose. And I was like, that's awesome. And I was like so interested because that's what we're talking about here. And then they stopped. And I was like, so what does that even mean? And now I'm going to go into another reason why having a detailed, full-blown potential or purpose, principles, and pursuits, why that's important. And it's not just to have something on the wall that we stare at. It's so that we can adapt our behaviors and have clear focus so that we can do things. And that's the rest of this, is going into the do things now. So I'm going to go into the next block here, which is external. And this is external influences. So these external influences are the factors and experiences like your upbringing, your relationships, your environment. We talked about this a little bit ago. The media that we consume. Think about how much money is being spent. I did a little bit of check on this. From a dollar perspective, the amount of marketing dollars over the last, I think it was 15 years, has tripled. Absolutely tripled. So if we look at the amount of marketing dollars spent in the U.S. tripled over a period of a decade and a half, has tripled, that means people are trying to spend money to get you to do something, right? That's what we do. That's what we do in business. Now the question is, on our side, do we take that information and make decisions based on what? We're going to look at these products and we're going to decide. What are we deciding based on? If we know where we want to go in life, we can say, I want to do this because it's consistent with my pursuits and my purpose. And if we have those focus anchors, then it's like, well, that's not consistent. I don't need to do that, right? But if we don't have those focus anchors, all this money is being spent. And by the way, the money that's being spent isn't just arbitrary. There's a lot of psychology. There's a lot more psychology getting you to do something that may not be consistent with what you want to do than there is people providing products that are consistent with what you want to do. What I mean is that a lot of the products that are being pushed on you aren't necessarily good for you. You know, look at the wellness industry. While it's big, it's not nearly the size of the tobacco or the alcohol industry, right? Who has more money? You know, who's spending more money to get you to do things? Those two industries, right?
Hey, Dan.
Yeah.
It is maybe a way to think about this too is the marketing dollars, is it speaking to you to do something, or is it speaking to the shadow to do something?
Well, that's a good point. So, and maybe both, because you know, I'd have to look into this too, but I've never heard it that way. But yeah, I mean, it's true. It's like looking at how do we get you. And shadows, by the way, is really a reflection of short-term pleasure, right? Short-term pleasure might be, you know, me doing something to get you out of my face. That might be anger, that might be questioning, that might be me walking away. Or it might be saying, you know, I had a really tough day, I need to just go get totally slosh drunk, right? So it's really, it's targeting a behavior that may not be consistent with what you want. But in the short run, man, that temptation sound really good. Does it feel good to go do this now? And if we haven't anchored our focus in something, it's like, well, then we go through the justification process. You know, justify. Another phrase for that is just a lie, right? Justify, just a lie. We start justifying bad behaviors or shadows based on really short-term thinking. I need to go eat this tonight. Right? That butter, you know, sounds really, really good on this, you know, loads and loads of butter or whatever. But is that really consistent with my overall wellness outcomes, right? Good point, Nick. I think there is something to that. It's really trying to trigger a short-term reaction that may not be consistent with our long-term focus. So that's this idea around external influence. We also, as I said earlier, need to go back because we're not just influenced by what we did today. We're really influenced by what had happened in our past, right? So are we aware of all the things that influence us? This person here, societal expectations, the challenge and pressure of being a successful leader while remaining a devoted mother. Is that real? Is anybody else, we could put father in there, we could put that as spouse or anything. Is anybody else feeling this societal expectation or pressure to succeed at something that, if we're not careful, may make us lose our relationships with the people we love most? Is anybody experiencing that? Right? So these are real things. If we don't know this, then when there's something that may appear very important at work, we might just go and say, I'm going to stay till midnight to get this done. And you know, when we do that, gosh, when we were in our 20s and we stayed till 8, 10, 12, midnight, we probably got a lot of accolades by doing that, didn't we? So we got some really good positive reinforcement. So, you know, that kind of, all these reinforcements, you know, and at home, I don't know about you, but my wife is like, yeah, you can stay till midnight. That's cool. It's important. but deep down inside she wasn't giving me negative reinforcement for me staying at work late, because I did a lot of those, midnight type things. And it took away from my relationship at home until I got really clear that how does work positively impact home, right? So that's another thing here on this external side. So these external influences. The other part of this is inspiration. What inspires you, or even greater, who inspires you? Why do they inspire me? What about them inspires me? And if we really dig into inspiration, it's usually they have something that we want, not physically, they don't inspire us because of the car they drive or the house they inspire us because of what they do, whether they exude trust. And then if we take that a step further and say, why do they inspire me? I like their trustworthiness. And it's like, well, what about me? Now we need to shine the light back on me and say, what does that mean about what I think about trust? And do I need to start working on trust within me? So all these things are meant to start giving us awareness on how we manage our behaviors and our actions, right? So that's the idea around inspiration. So I'm going to go on to internal, but any other comments around external before I start talking about internal? Nope. When we started doing webinars, heavily during COVID, everybody was like all in. Now I do webinars, it's really even hard to get people to turn their videos on. So I appreciate you guys turning your videos on and even smiling occasionally. Kim and Nick, I just noticed that. Chris, you're smiling too. So I do like that, because there's real human beings there. It's awesome. But the world of webinars has really changed. So I recognize that, but I do appreciate you guys being there, because I'm actually looking at your faces. I'm not looking at my camera. So on this internal side, because a lot of what happens to us is we need to be careful of what external influences we take in, because what we take in becomes us, right? They actually become our internal attributes. Of course, we're born DNA with certain attributes, but if we're not careful, we tend to think who we are is who we hung out with when we were kids, or how we react to things. So be careful. Think about all the different impacts, and what are we bringing into our heart? What is really making us who we are? And what are the things that we think, these attributes that we have, these inherent qualities, traits, and characteristics that shape our decisions, actions, and behaviors? Again, we're all going back. Every one of these are there so that we can make better decisions about what we do. It's not about posting something on our refrigerator. It all goes back. Why do we care about these internal attributes? It's so that we're aware of certain things, so that we can make better decisions consistent with our outcomes or our potential. See the connection? Again, that goes back to blending, a blended life or a life of integrity. Looking at our internal attributes so that we can make better decisions. But the real thing here is our attributes are really just a list of things. This isn't strengths and weaknesses, by the way. Many of you have taken the Strengths Finders assessment, and you walk out of there with your 5 dominant strength themes. Great, now what do you do with it, right? What do you do with that stuff? But I also spend a lot of time on the shadows, because those are the things that may have helped us in our past, but what got you here won't get you there, so to speak. There's a couple things around shadows. One is again, how do you handle conflict? I mentioned that earlier. How do you handle conflict? How do you react to that? Is it an opportunity for me to shut someone down and walk away, or continue? Was that a question? Nope, I'm sorry. So how do you handle conflict? The answer to that will actually reveal a shadow. And what we need to look at is conflict is an opportunity to establish a better relationship. It's not meant to sever a relationship. And so many times conflict severs relationships. But on the focus spectrum, if we're self-centered, we're thinking about, how do I get out of this conversation? What do I do to stop this? Or what do I do to share my dominance so that I'm right? But if we move from being self-centered into people-centric, switching our focus to the people side of the equation, when we're experiencing a level of conflict, how do we look at this conversation to establish a better relationship? So now we move our focus from self-centered into people-focused. That's a focus spectrum item. And now we start looking at some of these shadows and saying, how do I build better relationships, right? There's a whole bunch of different thing, you know, and one of those elements of this is humility is kind of the antidote to some of our shadows, being humble. You know, humility leads to better relationships, right? You've all heard the story, like there's some people that when you get in the room with them and you sit and you listen to them, you go, oh my God, I just hung out with the smartest person I've ever met, the smartest person in the world. And that's a good thing, right? We just met the smartest person in the world. You walk out, you're amazed at that. But then there's other people you sit in the room with and you go, oh my God, that person made me feel like I'm the smartest person in the world. You know, who do we want to be? Do we want to walk into a conversation, walking out there going, you know I'm the smartest person and I just showed them? Or would we rather say, when I go into a room, people walk out going, man, I feel like I'm so smart after talking to that person. Have you ever been into those conversations? You know, do you have somebody on your team that every time you talk to them, you feel kind of dumb? And they're just like, look how smart I am. And they might be the smartest person in the world. But do you ever walk out of there going, wow, I really feel empowered and intelligent? Who do you want to be? And as a leader in your organization, do you want to be the one that everybody says, look how smart they are? Or do you want them to say, look how smart they made me feel, right? That's a different level of leadership. But if we know this about ourselves through our shadows, do we desire to feel like we're smart? That's a shadow. Do we desire praise? Do we focus on our pride? You know, this internal pride that we have, this desire to be right. These are all shadows that get in the way of creating better relationships, which ultimately stand in our way to building or pursuing our purpose in life. Here's the internal side, the attributes and shadows. Does anybody have any shadows around overcommitment or perfectionism? These things, you know, in a context, you know, perfectionism is pretty good. We could say that's a strength until it's not, right? Reluctance to delegate, self-criticism. Does anybody suffer from that one? Sure, right? But if we don't know these things, these shadows are going to pop up and we're going to use them as a defense mechanism and they're going to keep us from getting to where we want to go. Again, but if we don't know where we want to go, knowing our shadows means nothing, right? We need to know where we want to go. We need to understand who we are. We need to understand what's influencing, so we put all of this together to live a better life, better influence ourselves and others around us. So I'm going to move into these things called focus lenses. Remember I mentioned that? These are green, by the way. They're green because based on the focus spectrum, we're now moving forward. So the other, and when we talked about external influences and our internal attributes, those were all red side focus. We're analyzing what's going on, right? So the focus spectrum is inherent in this personal whiteboard. So if we look at our personal whiteboard right here, we see color bands. Red and red is just, and it's directly connected to the focus spectrum. We're giving ourselves an opportunity to pause and analyze what's going on externally and internally, and that's the true red side focus. We're not going anywhere. But now we're moving to a different segment of this conversation, and that is moving to the green side, and now we're looking at creating clear outcomes that can become focus anchors in our life. So on the bottom here of the focus of the personal whiteboard are the green side of the focus spectrum. Remember I talked about focus anchors. Now we're creating clear anchors in our life around relationships, wellness, work, and interests so that we can anchor our focus. This is going forward. So I just wanted to share that connection of the focus spectrum, creating focus anchors, to building a life plan. So all this stuff, by the way, is blended, right? It's all blended, or to substitute another word, this is how we live a life of integrity. So on the relationship side, we'll jump into that. So relationships, this is interesting because as we built out this personal whiteboard, what I've done personally is I'm like, first off, who are the most important relationships in my life? Now, I'm not trying to say there's unimportant relationships, but there kind of is, right? Who are the most important relationships? So I have relationship focus and outcomes and actions around my relationship with my wife. Clear ones, like a business plan type thing. Not quite like that, but similar. Because if I can't succeed with my relationship with my spouse, then I'm a failure in life, in my opinion. I could be successful in all these other areas, but if I can't succeed with that relationship, It's all just show. Because that relationship impacts my relationships with my kids. My kids are grown now, but my daughter, who just recently had a grandkid, or she didn't have a grandkid, she had a kid, which is now my grandkid. My daughter, I said the best thing, and I don't give my daughter advice anymore. That's part of my relationship focus with my daughters, is I don't try to give them advice. I want to move from giving them rules to becoming their friend. That's my focus with them. But with my daughter, I said, I'm going to pause for a second, give you some advice. The best thing you can do for your kid is model a good relationship between the two of you. That's the extent of my advice for you. And that's why I think if we can have positive relationships, fulfilling relationships with our spouse, our significant other, that translates into better relationships with our kids. Now, if we're also doing that, we're starting to see this integration of relationships. It also translates into better relationships at work because we're not stressed out about our home life, right? So work starts impacting life, life starts impacting home. So in this construction-wise relationships, we have clear focus, a focus statement, and then clear outcomes. I mentioned my wife being one, my kids being one, my work associates being one, and then another one for me is I want to select people in my community that we can have good, deep, and meaningful relationships. And I've done some things with that in mind to create groups around various different interest groups that we get together so that I can have deeper, meaningful relationships in my community. But it all stemmed from getting really clear with my focus and then creating outcomes based on specific people. And that's what I would encourage you. Who are some specific people that you want to establish meaningful relationships with? That will change how you show up in meetings. It will change moving us on the focus spectrum away from being self-centered to being people-centric if we create clear goals on the green side of the focus spectrum. Here's what this other person had on theirs: invest time and effort to build stronger connections with family, friends, and coworkers. That's a life relationship focus statement, and here are some outcomes. In business, we have tangible outcomes. In life, it's a little hard, but you can start seeing these things. Then you reinforce that with actions and habits. This, by the way, for those that actually went through this, in your software has the ability to identify the actions to support these outcomes. You also have the ability to do what we call a daily habit tracker that then adapts. I want to turn strengthening family bonds, that first outcome, I want to turn that into a habit. So what do I need to do to turn that in habit? And if I do these three things every day, this becomes more likely. So this is the relationship focus. And by the way, I start with relationship because the value of your life is revealed in the value of your relationships. You might have the most successful business in the world, but if you really want to see the true value of your life, look at the value of your relationships from top to bottom. That's why we start with relationships, because then it goes back to why on earth are we even here, right? Are we here to make as much money? Maybe that's true. But if we really if we really dig deeper, most of us will arrive that we're really here in order to help each other and be part of a community, and that's relationships. So I'm going to pause before we go to the next one and just ask you, what questions, what comments do you have related to relationships as it relates to the personal whiteboard? None?
So one thing that strikes me in relationships and internal and external influences is something that I've been working on pretty in a focused manner for the last 6 to 10 months, which is managing my attention. For me, I'm doing it through a mindfulness practice, meditation, because attention is the thing that we just can't get any more of. There's only so many hours. And you talked earlier about lack of ability to actually multitask, and that comes back to attention as well. And so I think for me, having integrity between these things I put on paper and the actual minute-to-minute dedication of that attention or the focus of that attention is the thing that kind of at a meta level is my biggest challenge.
Yeah, man, attention.
Where I want to go and where I'm actually going.
And that's a perfect word, attention. You know, where your attention is where your heart is, right? And the idea of here we have focus outcomes, then we have to create actions. But what you're doing is saying, I want to turn meditation into a habit. I don't want to think about it. So when something's a habit, it's automatic. And we want to create meaningful habits that are consistent with our outcome and our focus. And it sounds like that's what you're doing, Ben.
Yeah, and I want to create some habits among my staff also. And so all of these practices kind of need to trickle down.
You know, that's interesting, and I'll just I'll talk to that because you know, if you look at what we're doing here, and we're talking, this is usually what happens. Most of you guys are in the senior level of your organization. I checked some of you guys out and reached out to you on LinkedIn, but this is usually afforded and available to the senior level of the organization, these types of conversations. And my passion is to make these conversations available to everybody in the organization, and that's essentially what we've done with AI. So the AI element of this is our attempt to take these conversations, bottle them up, and put them in the hands of everybody in the organization so that they can pursue their potential. Because my potential is not fulfilled if I'm not helping others reach their potential. And that's a huge component of me pursuing my potential. So now technology has the ability to do what was only reserved for the executive elite now. And that's the big technological breakthrough here. And because everything we're talking about here can be and is available to everybody at every level of the organization. This isn't an executive level conversation. Everybody in this country has goals, aspirations, and potential. We just haven't tapped into it. And that's the whole connection with what AI can do that other software applications and technology couldn't do in the past. I'm going to go through these pretty quickly here because they follow a similar pathway here. And this is wellness. I talked about this, psychological and physical well-being, clear focus followed by specific outcomes. And here's some wellness things. This one gets a little more specific. Compete in at least one A race annually, securing high placement top 5. That's a very specific outcome related to physical wellness. Annual biohealth checkup, but the goal here is to get LDL levels below 75 or low ApoB. Very specific measurable things that are supported with diet, exercise, and so forth. So this to give you an example of how specific we can be within our outcomes that we want to create. We want to enhance sleep time for better recovery. The outcome is better recovery. Here are the actions. So this is how this software helps us do this. Now everybody that did the software, it populates all these things, but that's all modifiable as you dig deeper and do this work. It's all modifiable. So I'm going to move on to the work side here. We have plenty of conversations around setting clear focus around work and outcomes. Remember I said earlier, most companies do strategic planning of some sort. So usually this isn't a hard one. This is usually the easiest for everybody because we've been trained on this. It's harder to talk about relationships with the same level of specificity around outcomes as we do our work. We know our work goals. So I won't spend a whole lot of time here. You guys know this. Here's an example here, develop highly capable and empowered relationship team. But this is all, now we're making an attempt to connect work and life, right? So keeping going here. Then our personal interests, you know, do we like to travel? Do we like to play an instrument? You know, an interest-focused statement, clearly identifying personal interests, enriching one's well-being. So again, these interests actually make us healthier. They make us show up at work better. Because if we didn't have any personal interests, you know, we don't have that sense of escape, that sense of let's be creative because all day I've been looking at spreadsheets, right? I want to spend some time being creative. We need to acknowledge that people have creative sides to them in their personal interests, right? So that's the personal interest side. Here's some examples with this person who runs the company. Stress relief, community involvement, personal growth, and so forth. So what are we doing there? So with that said, you know, that's this framework. We've now adopted it into an interview that then produces a personal whiteboard. And some of you guys did that. Now on the side, we talked about work underneath there, and work is a key element of us pursuing our potential. So what we did, and this is a little bit of a sidebar here, is that same process you went through, and Kim, we talked about this earlier, that same process you went through on the personal side is available for everyone in the organization so that they can pursue their potential and see where work complements all areas of their life, creating greater meaning at work. But on the back side of this is what is the company doing? So now taking that same personal whiteboard framework, the company does the same thing here by creating this framework, which is different, but you see it's very similar to that personal whiteboard, but now we're talking about the company's strategic plan. So how do we create an integrated or a company that operates with integrity where our customer, product, operations, and people are all complementing each other using the same process and framework that we did on the personal side, right? And then similarly, our companies are distracted by external impacts and internal strengths and weaknesses. So on the company side, it's called the strategy whiteboard, as Kim, you pointed out. That's the path you went down, or the track. And that's what a strategy whiteboard looks like. And the AI does the same thing, essentially. It interviews. So now not only can you help people identify their pursuits in their life and reinforce it with clear actions and outcomes, you can now ask everybody, those same people in the organization, about what do you think the company should do, what external impacts. It's the same exact process. So not only do you care about their personal life and their growth and work, you're now asking them to be a part of the strategic planning and execution side of this, all made possible by generative AI or conversational AI specifically. So that's what's going on in the background here. And this is the same process. You know, they mirror each other for a reason. And it just produces a company's strategy whiteboard. So you see, the essence of this is how do we blend work and life, creating integrity between work and life. And it's all about framework and process and direction and outcomes. And if we do it in our personal life, why not do it in our business so that it's the same? When we have the same framework at work and the same framework for our personal life, we start seeing greater integration of work and life. And that's really what we're doing. So when you put all this together, we have company focus and employee focus, and you guys went through just the employee focus side. But the real benefit is doing all of this together. So with that, I'm going to move on to the final right here and close this out and open this up and see what questions are coming to mind. How do you feel about this for those that went through and used this AI software? It's completely new technology. Again, couldn't do this a year ago, especially on the strategy side. Could you imagine interviewing 500 people in an hour? Like literally, you send out a link, an hour later, you now have a strategy whiteboard that represents the full comprehensive dominant themes of your whole company that quick. Good luck. I mean, that's like a 9-month process the old way. So anyway, open it up. What are you guys thinking? What are you hearing? What did you hear? What are you thinking? What questions do you have? We can obviously spend more time. Mike's here too, not necessarily on this because I know you guys are time strained, but if you wanted to spend more time going deeper into this, happy to go deeper. There's a lot more to this. We just went through an hour and a half little overview of this. So what's on your mind?
And I have one question about, you were talking about relationships, but you mentioned that there's an action tracker or an action alert or something like that. Yeah. How do you find that in here?
Yeah, Chris, that is in your personal whiteboard. And on the left-hand side, you'll see daily tracker. And you just create a daily tracker and you track it and you have to create specific habits. If you would like, just send me a note and I can take you through a 10-minute, I can actually show you how to get there in a 10-minute little Zoom. And now what you're doing is you're adapting your actions and habits, and you evaluate yourself every day on that, which is awesome, by the way. It's life-changing. I don't say that too much, but it is life-changing when we really evaluate ourselves that with our habits. But just send me a note and we'll schedule a time. Just take 10 minutes.
All right, thank you. I see that tab, so I'll play with that a little bit. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was great.
Great. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. What else is on your mind?
Dan, is the idea that every person in the company would do a personal 360? Is that the vision? And then how does that blend if you did do the company strategy session, or how does that blend with the personal 360? Because
first off, what I would like to happen is probably not going to happen. I would love for everybody to do the personal 360 and have their own personal whiteboard, and I would love for everybody in the organization to participate in the strategy. What really happens is not everybody really buys off on that, and that's okay, because success is not based on 100%. Success is based on progress. So if you had 50% of your people in your organization participate in life planning and really got clear on how work impacts their life at your work, your business, and then you asked everybody in the organization, and maybe 75% of those people participate in the strategy process, that's going to be better than the old way. And then we start seeing culture come together. Culture starts forming around these things. The lexicon, the language starts changing on personal growth, focus, spectrum, and all these things. And then other people are on the outside looking in, go, I want a piece of that. And that's the power of culture. And that happens over time. So the process is, we have a process, but it really depends, Nick, on your individual organization, on the pathway you go through this. So our software is technology. We support that software. Any technology engagement, we support you and hold your hand and walk through that. And then we customize, we work with you to identify the best way to do this. And it's surprisingly inexpensive, by the way, but so I don't want it to sound really expensive, but we work with you because for some companies it's let's start off with the strategy 360. For others it's start off with the personal 360. It just depends based on conversations on how you would like to do that. What else? Mark. Let's see, I've got some names down here on the bottom. Raymond's picture's here, but no Raymond.
It's pronounced Ramon, by the way.
Oh, Ramon.
That's all right.
Sorry, I can't be the first one that's done that.
Nope.
All right, Sean, what about you? What about on your end? Any feedback, comments?
I think it was great. I appreciate everyone taking the time, and Dan, for you walking us through it. Let us know if there's anyone on the call, or let me know if there's anyone on the call that you want to spend more time with. Happy to get you connected. The thing we miss when we do these through Zoom is there's no side conversations or opportunities to get to know others on the call. So if there's anyone that you said, hey, I wish I had more time talking to someone on the call, let me know. I'll make sure you get connected, and reach out to Dan, Mike, if you have any follow-up questions and would like to see more depth of what they put together here.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, reach out if you need anything. We've got some really cool stuff going on here, and based on some of the conversations we're having with some fairly large distribution partners, it seems to be being very well accepted in the business community, and I think this is valuable. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We'd love to spend a few minutes just talking more. We just gave you the model, but there's obviously more to it. So thank you all for spending the time and participating. We really appreciate it.
This was great. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Dan, thanks
Sean,
everyone
thank
for
you.
organizing, Sean.
Welcome. Have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.